It was a summer night in a small house on the outskirts of a big city. This modest house sheltered a large family, 7 siblings, their parents, and Uncle Sebastio, a quiet and enigmatic man. The house had only one bedroom, where everyone squeezed into sleep. The family was united, but daily struggles were always present. The protagonist of our story was the youngest, almost 5 years old. He vividly remembered those times, although 40 years had passed. His memories were as clear as an old photograph faded by time. He recalled playing with his siblings, shared laughter, and stories told around the dinner table. The house was simple, made of exposed bricks, with a red tile roof and small windows. In front, there was a poorly maintained garden, where a few wilted flowers and weeds grew. At the back, there was a service area where the mother washed clothes by hand, and where the father stored his welding tools. Uncle Sebastio, a man of few words, had lived with them since the protagonist could remember. He was tall and thin, with a deep gaze that seemed to see beyond what was in front of him. The children had a certain respect mixed with fear for him, as Sebastio rarely smiled and always seemed immersed in thought. The bedroom where everyone slept was small but cozy. There was a double bed for the parents, a small bed for the protagonist, and a mattress on the floor for the older siblings. The teenage sisters slept in the living room, where they gathered at night to watch the old black and white TV. This television was a luxury, a meeting point for the family, although it was only turned on at night to avoid overheating. Life in that house was hard but full of heartwarming moments. The parents worked hard to support the family, and despite the difficulties, there was a lot of love among them. The father, always with hands marked by heavy work, found time to play with the children, while the mother, with her soft voice, taught prayers and kept the faith in God alive in the house. However, there was something in that house that always intrigued the protagonist. It was a small room near the service area where the father stored his tools. The door to the small room was almost always locked, but occasionally the father went in and out with mysterious objects. The naturally curious child always tried to peek, but could never see much beyond a large, dusty black bag tucked in a corner. He didn't remember the first time he noticed the black bag, but since then, his curiosity grew daily. The bag was tied at the top with an old wire and was covered in a thick layer of dust that seemed untouched for years. The boy always wondered what could be inside, but never had the courage to ask his father. There was something scary about that bag, something that made him hesitate whenever he thought about questioning it. Days passed, and the boy continued to watch the mysterious room from afar. He created theories in his young mind. Maybe it was hidden treasure, or perhaps something dangerous his father kept locked away to protect them. Every time the father entered the small room, the boy tried to peek but could never see more than the shadow of the black bag. The older folks said that unbaptized children attracted strange things, and he, still unbaptized in 1976, shivered at the thought that there might be something supernatural about that bag. Even so, his mother, a woman of unwavering faith, taught prayers to the children every day, trying to keep the family close to God and away from any harm. One hot afternoon, the family's routine was interrupted by an unexpected event. The protagonist, always curious, watched his mother working in the yard when he saw her head towards the mysterious small room. With a set of keys in hand, she unlocked the padlock that protected the room, and for the first time, he had a chance to see the inside of that sinister room more clearly. The mother entered, rummaging among the tools and dusty objects until she found the black bag. She pulled it out with some difficulty due to its size and the accumulated weight of years of dust. The boy, watching everything with wide eyes, felt a mix of fear and excitement. Finally, the mystery of that bag was about to be revealed. With the bag out of the small room, the mother began to untie the wire that sealed the mouth of the bag. The boy got closer, trying to peek inside. When the bag finally opened, a musty smell escaped, and pieces of something began to be pulled out one by one. They were parts of a doll. First, the arms, then the legs, and finally, the head. The doll, after being assembled and cleaned, was almost the boy's size. It had long blonde hair, although a bit tangled and faded by time. Its green eyes, vivid even after so many years, seemed to follow movements around it. She wore a green dress of an old-fashioned style reminiscent of the 60s. On her chest was an inscription in golden letters, Amigwinha. The mother explained that the doll belonged to the boy's older sister when she was a child. The sister, now a teenager, confirmed the story, reading aloud the name of the doll. However, from the first moment, the boy felt a shiver when looking at it. There was something disturbing about those immobile features, those eyes that seemed alive. Despite his uneasiness, he didn't immediately express the discomfort he felt. The mother, happy to have found an old toy, decided the doll should be donated. The next day, a cartman would come by to pick up some old bottles, and along with them, the doll would be taken to a new home, where it might find a new child to play with. The idea of getting rid of the doll brought relief to the boy, but the night still held surprises. The doll, now clean and assembled, was placed in a corner of the room, on top of the wardrobe. The boy, lying in his bed, couldn't take his eyes off it. The light from the hallway, filtered through the partially open door, illuminated the doll's face, creating shadows that seemed to dance around it. As the night wore on, the boy began to feel growing discomfort. Something about the doll didn't seem right. It was as if, with each blink, it was a little closer. Its green eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him shiver. He turned to the side, trying to ignore the fear, but a cold sensation ran down his spine. When he finally decided to face the doll again, he had a vision that froze his blood. The doll had turned its head and was looking directly at him. Its eyes, previously inert, seemed to glow with their own light. The boy squeezed his eyes shut, hoping it was just a bad dream. But when he opened his eyes again, the doll was no longer on the wardrobe. It was standing on the floor, even closer to his bed. Terrified, he tried to scream, but no sound came out. He felt his body freeze with fear as the doll approached, its fixed and expressionless eyes becoming the only thing he could see. Finally, he managed to let out a piercing scream, waking up the whole house. The parents and siblings ran to the room, turning on the light and finding the boy trembling with fear. He pointed to the doll, now back in its place on the wardrobe, but with one leg strangely raised. Through tears, he recounted everything he had seen, but the siblings laughed, thinking it was just a nightmare. Despite the family's skepticism, the mother decided to take the doll outside, leaving it in the service area until the cartman could take it away the next morning. The boy spent the night awake, silently praying and clutching his rosary, trying to ward off the terror the doll had caused. When the first rays of sunlight finally started to enter through the window, bringing a sense of relief, the mother suggested everyone go back to bed to try to get some more sleep. The boy, still holding the rosary, closed his eyes, trying to calm his mind. The next morning, the family gathered in the kitchen for breakfast, still discussing the incident. The cartman arrived punctually, ready to pick up the old bottles and the doll. The boy watched from a distance as the doll was taken away, feeling a mix of relief and lingering fear. He knew the doll was no longer there, but what had happened that night would stay with him forever. Even after the doll was gone, the boy couldn't forget that experience. He developed a deep fear of the dark and began sleeping with a light on. The siblings still joked about the doll from time to time, but for him, the terror of that night was real and lasting. That terrible night was etched into the boy's memory. Even with the doll Amigwinha gone, the trauma continued to haunt him. In the days that followed, he avoided going near the small room where the doll had been found, and darkness became his enemy. He developed a deep fear of the dark and started sleeping with a light on every night. The siblings, despite the initial jokes, began to realize how much that event had affected the boy. The mother, always attentive, continued to recite prayers with him every night, seeking to calm him and ward off any evil that might still be lurking in the house. The father, though still skeptical, never mentioned the doll again, respecting the son's fear. Years passed, and the family continued to live in the small house, facing the daily challenges. The boy grew up, became a teenager, and eventually a man. He moved far from the house where it all happened, seeking new opportunities and trying to leave behind the memories of that night of terror. However, the impact of that experience never completely disappeared. Even at 45 years old, he still needed a light on to sleep, and the rosary he held that night was always close by. He got married, had children, and shared with them the lessons of faith and courage his mother had taught him. Eventually, he started telling his story to his nephews and, later, to his own children. Relating that event became a way to exorcise the demons of the past, and also a means to warn new generations about the mysteries and dangers that could be hidden in the most unexpected things. The years brought wisdom and understanding. He learned to cope with his fears and use his experience to help others. The stories he told about the Dala Migwenha and that frightening night turned into lessons about courage, faith, and the importance of facing the unknown. Now, he lived in peace, far from the shadows of that house, but still with the memories vividly in his mind. Occasionally, at night, he felt a shiver when remembering the doll and the terror he felt. But holding the rosary, he felt a greater strength, a protection that had been with him since that night. The story of the Dala Migwenha became a family legend, passed down from generation to generation, as a reminder that the unknown can be frightening, but faith and courage can always prevail. And so, he found his own happy ending, not by the absence of fear, but by the ability to face and overcome it, transforming a terrifying experience into a lesson of life and resilience. Meanwhile, the old house, now inhabited by another family, continued to keep its secrets, with its walls witnessing new dramas and new stories. The mysterious small room was still there, perhaps waiting for someone to dare to open its door again and discover what else might be hidden in that forgotten corner. But that, as they say, is a story for another day.